This bites. Your commercial's stupid, you're a no-talent hack, and your donuts are stale. I'm out of here. Fast, fast, fast.
Did you know that in the future, every DC comic hero has a dark fate? You know, not only are these future state books apocalyptic and dark in nature to begin with, most of the heroes aren't exactly having a good ending. Now, some of the writers, including Ram V on Swamp Thing, have used this and done some spectacular things. I think the 2-issue Swamp Thing and Future State, maybe if it was beefed up a little bit more, might end up being like an all-time classic Swamp Thing story. I'll probably be talking about this very shortly on the channel with Joe Corallo. We're going to talk about the one DC character that they can't seem to screw up, and we've decided on Swamp Thing. So I'm not going to get into those details. Now, Wonder Woman from Joelle Jones also does a pretty darn good job. She doesn't exactly win, but she does learn something about herself and goes on her merry way to become an even bigger and better superhero in the future. You know, Superman in Metropolis, not so great. Harley Quinn was definitely a letdown. Turns out she's just a piece of crap no matter what. If you liked Harley Quinn, I wouldn't read that one. Now, there is one Future State book, as far as the ending goes, that stands above the rest, as much as a how much does DC Comics hate Wally West and Wally West fans? I cannot get my head around it. I can't understand their disdain for this character. How many times can you just completely fuck this character over? Just make him a worthless piece of crap. Just keep turning him into like a serial killer. It's old now. We've seen it time and time again. Oh, and I hear that, Wes, you just want the same thing over and over. No. There is a time and a place for a story like this. But to do it over and over and over, and at the end of like a 2-issue story, there's nothing earned here. It's just there for controversy and, you know, to subvert expectations. Congratulations. You didn't subvert anything. I expected most of Future State to suck. And The Flash, #2, exceeded my expectation of suckdom. It's worse than I anticipated. You know, even after the events of Heroes in Crisis, Wally West murders everybody at Sanctuary, goes in the future, kills himself, frames 2 people in the past. Pretty bad stuff. Now, 2 creators went out of their way to redeem the character and try to fix what happened with Tom King's fucking Heroes in Crisis disaster or character assassination of Wally West. First, Scott Lobdell and Brett Booth did their Flash Forward series, where essentially Tempest Fugit, whoever that character is that Dan Didio created, who's overwatching the Dark Multiverse, went and grabbed Wally West out of his cell, said, it's time to atone for yourself. You're going to go bouncing around multiverses in the Dark Multiverse, start saving worlds, creating hope again, and redeem yourself. And eventually he becomes, obviously he's the blue Dr. Manhattan Flash. But he goes and he saves his family. He brings them back. You're like, wow, didn't think it was possible. Is the character fully redeemed? No. But this goes a long way to do it. And then we have Joshua Williamson, obviously in Splash 750. A very good comic issue. One of my favorite comic issues of all of 2020. It was on our list that we talked about. It's excellent. Now, he also goes and does his own part to maybe ease the pain and fix some of the absolute character assassination that Tom King did in Heroes of Crisis. It turns out the Reverse Flash was manipulating Wally into believing that no one would ever believe him after he was so overcome by grief and loneliness that he exploded and killed a bunch of people. Now, what Joshua Williamson did, and even Scott Lobdell did, is the equivalent of taking like a football-sized suppository. Yes, it alleviates some of the pains, some of the symptoms, but it's still really fucking uncomfortable. Because if you think about it, on the surface, even if Wally West was being manipulated by the Reverse Flash, he still lost hope. He still lost hope in humanity. He lost hope in himself, and he lost hope in Barry Allen and the other superheroes that anyone would believe in. And he went out there and he framed 2 innocent people for murder. He jumped in the future, killed himself. He all did that, even though he was manipulated, but he lost hope. That is the key essence of Wally West's character. So yes, they did do some things to make it better, but they could never really make it right. And it's too bad, but I applaud their efforts to right some wrongs. Now, I will absolutely not applaud Brandon Vietti's efforts in Future State Flash to just keep doing the same wrongs over and over. And this time, of course, he's a serial killer. Of course, he ends up murdering almost the entire Flash family. And apparently Barry Allen's an idiot. I am so sick and goddamn tired of DC Comics hating on these legacy characters. I'm a huge Nightwing fan. Here in a few days on the channel, I'm going to do my 10 favorite comic book characters of all time. Shocker. Dick Grayson's on the list. And I was pretty pissed when they, essentially gave him amnesia, changed the character drastically, and we had to read a year and a half of absolute atrocious Nightwing stories. It pales in fucking comparison to the things that have been done to Roy Harper specifically, and even worse, to Wally West. It always feels like maybe Roy Harper has been done the fucking dirtiest. But no, it is not. Wally West always seems to pull ahead. I guess he's more of a prominent character. So they just keep tearing this fucking character down over and over and over. The latest example being Future State Flash, which I'm going to review here in a second. I got to get this shit out of my system first. God, why do I keep subjecting myself to this bullshit? Obviously, I knew after the first issue that things weren't going well for Wally West. I could not have anticipated that they would end the story in this fashion. Reading comic books shouldn't be a painful experience, for the most part. There should be painful arcs when you have to go through things with the character that are painful. But you shouldn't hate reading comic books when you're done with it. You should be hoping for brighter days ahead, but there's no hope for that. DC will never give that to you now. It is this fucked up, flawed version, just shell of itself, that Dan Didio and Scott Snyder, Brian Michael Bendis, Tom King have ushered in, and we are inundated with this bullshit constantly. How did we get here? This stupid dark multiverse. Obviously, it started before that. It's crisis after crisis. In Wally West appears to be a prime candidate just for character assassination over and over again. They always bring him back. They say, we're sorry. We're giving you back the Wally West that you wanted. And within a couple of years, they say, fuck it. It's time to turn him into a killer again. Fuck it. He's going to murder the world again. Fuck it. He's going to destroy the timeline and destroy families and lose his kids. And when he goes into a speed race, he's not going to save his kids because he's a fucking loser. I'm not even the world's biggest Wally West fan, but I've had enough. I imagine Wally West fans are even in more dire straits right now. And I'll say this, after reading the first conclusion of Future State Stories, if you're a Shazam fan, I wouldn't buy that book. It's not going to go well for you and your favorite hero, Billy Batson. Likely to be a bad guy until the end of fucking times. Just like Wally West. All right. With that, fuck it. Let's get into the review. I'm here to review a comic. Let's get into it. There's some actual good stuff here. We'll hit the good stuff first, and we'll get into all the shitty parts where Brandon Vietti absolutely destroys the character. Now, first off, I do want to say kudos to Brandon Peterson and Will Conrad, the artists on this. This is an enormous step up from last week with Dale Eaglesham. The art, for the most part, is very vibrant and lively, even though the story is so fucking dour. It gives you fucking depression just trying to get through it. The art itself is actually quite top-notch. He obviously is the new artist on Flash in Infinite Frontier, so that is good news. There's your good news for the video, people. Brandon Peterson absolutely has a great feel for Flash. I think he's going to do a great job on it. Obviously, we know this story takes place in the year 2027 in the DC universe. We know the stuff that happens in 2025 in Batman, they are working towards actively in Detective and Batman. It feels like they were working towards that kind of stuff in Superman as well. So I imagine Flash, while not all of the futures in Future State are set in stone, I imagine they will be working towards this one. Maybe if they watch this fucking review, they'll abandon course. I doubt it because they hate Wally West fans. And I think there feels like there might be just a genuine piece of disdain for DC fans. But that's enough. The rant was already over, and I continued it anyway. We do get this wonderful introduction to Barry Allen in the future. It turns out not only have we lost Bart Allen during one of his missions to procure the weapons of his past enemies, we lost Jay Garrick to Wally West while they were fighting him We end up losing Max Mercury off panel. What a wonderful ending to such a terrific character. Obviously, he's not an A-lister as far as the Flash heroes go, but he probably deserved a better death than that. It is heavily insinuated that he died of some type of illness, probably likely from famine, given from Wally West, and they had to burn the body. But we get this little introduction. Boom, there we go. And he's working on all these weapons. And this part is actually kind of fun. He's taken all the weapons from his villains. He's taken Captain Cold's weapons and the Mirror Master's weapons and Boomerang's weapons and everyone's weapons, and he's tweaked them so he can go and fight Wally West and finally save his friend, even though it's cost him everything so far. Him trying to save Wally West has essentially cost him the entire Flash family and his wife. There you go. So we get into the fun part. We see him in this kind of goofy costume where he's got the mine helmet thing going on and the boomerangs, all this cool stuff. And they go and they have fun. And this part is actually cool. I was like, wow, Brandon Vietti's kind of saved the ending of this thing despite a very hopeless and dour beginning. We're going to get some hope in the end. And it's cool. It's what you want from this kind of story. Barry Allen wielding all the weapons of his foes against Wally West that have all been tweaked because he wants to use science against the Speed Force. And it looks like it's going pretty well. And then, shockingly, because it is Wally West, it is not going very well. Barry's coup de grace against famine-controlled Wally West as he is going to freeze him with Captain Cold's gun. There is a chemical in there that when the famine guy uses Wally's body to vibrate the ice and melt it, he's going to breathe in these fumes and it's basically going to kill off all the muscle in Wally's body, so he'll no longer be able to use the Speed Force because he won't be able to walk. This in itself is a gruesome end for Wally. Certainly not what Barry Allen was professing to do by saving the character, but this feels like at least he has come to terms with what Wally Allen is, a villainous, murderous piece of crap, and that he needed to die. So he decides he's going to basically shrink him down to nothing. He basically atrophies his entire body, and Famine gets very upset. And then we learn that little piece of information that Wally West was not able to tell Barry Allen at the end of the first story. Famine doesn't just feed on like souls or anything. He feeds on hope. Now, what more hopeful character is there in the DC Comics universe than Wally West? Obviously, he is the reason that he used his body. And Barry Allen was fueling hope in all the people that were surrounding him that he could bring Wally back. And his hope and their hope in him that he could do this is essentially what has cost the lives of all these wonderful Flash characters in his marriage. Did you hear that? Hope was the enemy of the Flash family. All of their hope in Barry Allen is what cost their lives. Hope is what Famine was feeding on. Hope is what Famine was using Wally West's body and his spirit to consume to keep himself powerful. And Barry Allen, creating hope in the universe, is what fueled that monster, kept Wally West murdering people. Isn't that a wonderful, wonderful thought in your head? Now, obviously, this is a pretty decent turn. Now, if you ended it correctly, this wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But no, Brandon Vietti is not over. You are not going to get a hopeful ending. You cannot get anything close to something that may seem like the heroes winning in this comic book. It only gets worse. When I say worse, I mean far worse. It feels like Wally West has turned the tide. He's going to come back to Barry Allen, and it turns out Famine was using him all along. There was never any hope. And what Famine does, he takes over Wally West's body, and he time displaces Barry Allen, who has no Speed Force powers anymore, a few seconds at a time, so he can watch. For eternity, he can watch Wally West, overcome by famine, murdering people till the end of time. Isn't that a lovely note to end your Future State Flash note on? Wally West could not be salvaged. His spirit could not overcome the demons. Wally West could not be saved from famine. He will murder until the end of time. And his best friend, his mentor, his brother, the man he's looked up to essentially his entire life, his father figure, is going to sit a couple of seconds out of time and watch him do it for eternity. Congratulations, Brandon Vietti. You did something more disgusting than Tom King with Wally West. Because you included Barry Allen in it this time. Who wouldn't want to sit for eternity and watch their friend murder people forever? Just beautiful stuff here. This is what you had to look forward to in DC Comics. Isn't this the future state you always wanted? The most hopeful character in the DC universe, overcome by a spirit, murdering people endlessly until the end of time, and his best friend watching him and knowing that he could not stop him, and he couldn't stop him no matter what. And him trying to save his best friend Wally West is the reason that his wife left him. It's the reason that Bart Allen's dead. It's the reason that Jay Garrick's dead. It's the reason that Max Mercury's dead, and all the other characters that have fallen to Wally West a long time. And we know that he is a big part of why the Teen Titans Academy went down. We already saw him murder a couple of them there, so I think we'll see that he murdered more heroes in that place too. What a lovely fucking ending. Isn't this a great comic book? What do you score it? What's your score for the Flash Future State comic book, number 2? I'm giving it a 1 because the art was good. The story is atrocious. We've had enough. Wally West does not need to be a serial killer in every story from here to eternity. Just kill the character. Just kill the character and don't ever bring him back. Just don't ever bring him back. This is the kind of shit that makes you hate being a comic book fan. This is a 2-issue story. This was not a larger part of some big thing, like a big sweeping story arc where this really terrible thing is going to happen. But in the end, hope was going to prevail. It was never going to prevail. Barry Allen was always going to sit for eternity watching his friend murder people. The man in many ways he's the reason Wally West has Speed Force powers. He's a reason he's a Flash. He's the reason that this happened. Isn't that a lovely thing to think about? You can obviously end these things on down notes. Not everything has to be the most hopeful story of all time, but not everything has to be a superhero fucking snuff film either. This is like torture porn. I don't know, do you read your comic books for superhero torture porn? I know I don't. Now, have there been great stories where things like that happen? Obviously, Nightfall is one of the best Batman stories of all time. Guess what happened in the end? Batman fucking won. When did Wally West win? Every time they redeem him, he does something else. And even with the Dr. Manhattan Wally West, guess what? Scott Snyder didn't like that. If you read Dark Knight's Death Metal, he turned him right back into a villain. And Barry Allen told him it was stupid. Just so he let you know that he did not like Scott Lobdell's idea. The only person besides Joshua Williamson who seems to give a fuck about fixing this character or saving his reputation. Certainly Snyder doesn't. Certainly Dan Didio never did. Certainly Tom King doesn't. And certainly Brandon Vietti doesn't. Superhero torture porn. If that's your thing, you're going to love this comic. If you like Wally West Flash, you're probably going to despise it even more than me. I don't always feel this way about comic books. But whenever I see something quite like this, it just gets my goat. It's because we see it so often. If this was a once every 2 or 3, 4 year thing with different rotating characters, it would be one thing. But it seems to be coming around constantly. And Wally West seems to get it a lot. It's probably enough. I hate this comic book. I'm giving it a 1 because of the art. The story's atrocious. I was going to review all of Future State Week 5, but I'm not doing that now. This is the finale of Future State Week 5 in my opinion. Or in my mind. Fuck it. I'm out of here. That's the video.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.